Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Copilot Learning Hub Live, the show. Okay, so a Copilot that you all have been very curious about is Power Automate. I actually think this is one of the most useful Copilots on a day-to-day basis because who of us does not have something we would really love to automate in our lives, right? We don't want to go check every time. We don't want to run a thing every time. We really want automation to kind of just do it for us. But getting the exact same right syntax and automation, I think is kind of a pain. But my very good friend all the way from New Zealand, Eliza Benitez, is here to share with us how we can get AI to do our job for us, things that make me happy. Hi, Eliza. Thank you for joining us.
Hi everyone. Thank you so much, Donna, for the intro. So my name is Eliza. I'm a senior cloud advocate, and today I'm excited to share how you can use Copilot and Power Automate Cloud Flows to automate sending yourself a notification whenever your tasks in Dataverse are overdue.
I love it. Okay, this is great because every one of us has tasks somewhere that are overdue, right? For me, it's training or filing expense reports. I'm sure that's the same for many of you. Or whether it's a work-related thing or, respond back to this customer. I love the idea of, okay, here's a data table, here's your info, but how do you get notified? This is great. I love this scenario already. Please show us.
Yeah, sure. So on my screen, I have the Power Automate Maker portal, and this is what you're going to see when you want to use plain natural language to build your Cloudflow automation. Before I show you how that works, I'll show you what my tasks look like in Dataverse. So this is a list of all of my activities that I have to work on. And as you can see, I have several tasks that are past the due date of yesterday. So I'm based in New Zealand. Today's the 27th. So what I can do is I can head over to the Power Automate Maker portal and I can ask in plain natural language that I want to send a message to myself in Teams whenever my tasks in Dataverse are past the due date. So I've got a prompt here. And if I just scroll up and read the prompt to you, it says, automate checking daily at 8 a.m. in the New Zealand time zone if I have tasks in Dataverse that are past the due date. If I do have tasks past the due date, post a message to my user in Teams and reference the subject. So I'm going to select generate.
Oh, I love
So notice that I've used
Yeah.
natural language. So Copilot, in a matter of seconds, as you just saw, immediately suggests a flow that I can use. So it is using what we call the recurrence trigger. So that's going to allow me to specify the time I want this flow to be run. And then it's got a bunch of actions that will check whether I've got those tasks, whether I have tasks that are overdue, and then post a message to me in the Teams channel. Now, if I don't want to go ahead with this flow, I can always go ahead and enter or modify my prompt, but this looks pretty good. So I'm going to select next.
I like it.
Now, on this step.
By the way, can we talk about how this
yes.
saved like 1 hour of time? Because usually it would be find some flow template, find the 6 connectors, find, like what time zone am I in? What time would that be? Minus UTC 7. It would be a rigmarole. I've had to do one of these, like send me a reminder in European time zone that my meetings are all delayed. And I did it wrong. And I did it in Bangkok time instead of European time zone. So I was not just late, I was like 2 days late for my meeting. So I just love that it already gave you a baseline. That's pretty good, right? It's pretty good to start with.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's great.
And you'll see soon that even if there are actions that it has suggested that you don't like, you can either remove them or you can add to the flow that it had suggested. So in this step, what Power Automate Cloud Flow is doing is that it's just verifying that I have connections to these applications and services like Microsoft Dataverse and Microsoft Teams. Right here, you'll see a green tick. Otherwise, you'll see like a red cross that'll tell you that you need to create a connection in order to automate with these applications or services. But we've got the green tick of approval. So now I can select Create Flow. And again, you saw how in a matter of seconds, it added the trigger and the actions that it suggested.
Love it. This is great. This
Yeah.
is great.
So the first thing I will do is I'm going to update the name here because by default, it's going to use that prompt. So I'll just call this.
That's a long name. That's funny though. At least you know, right? At least you know what it is.
Yeah. Exactly.
Love it.
And a tip here, best practice, it's always good to give it a descriptive name, your cloud flow, so that if you share this flow with another user, or if, let's say, this flow is used as an enterprise flow, other users who come across this flow understand what it is. Right. But I'll show you a trick shortly with Copilot that will help a user understand what this flow does. Anyways, back to the main show. So we have the recurrence trigger. And remember how I mentioned my time zone of New Zealand? Well, let's go and check it out. Let's see if it actually recognized that I needed to do it in the time zone of New Zealand. And voila. You can see here that it's correctly selected the time zone. So Wellington is the capital of New Zealand. And so all I need to do is specify the start time. So the date of when I want this daily check to happen. So I'll put it in today's date. So there we have it. Now, because I'm saying this is the time zone of New Zealand, this is the particular date time string format that I need to provide. So now the Cloudflow will know, okay, from this date onwards, based on this time zone, I need to perform this check. So that's all done.
That's great. I like this time zone thing. It's so confusing to have to think about these things manually. That's very cool.
Yeah, time zone interception. Here we go.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next step is what we call the list rows action. So this is an action from Dataverse that will retrieve the table that I specify. So in other words, the table name that I need to specify is tasks. So this will now grab all of the tasks that have a due date past the date I've specified. Now, one of the parameters here is what we call filter rows. So I want to filter it by the date. However, Copilot hasn't got this quite right. So what I need to do is I'm going to add a couple of actions. And again, it's to do with time zone, because what we want to do is specify the date from midnight, so when the day starts, to the end of the day, so 11:59 p.m.
Okay.
So I can ask Copilot to first tell me, what is the format for the base time input in the convert time zone action. This is so that I understand what I need to do in terms of populating that field. So it's told me that it needs to be in the UTC format. So I need to provide the time in the UTC format in order to convert it to the desired time zone. So I'm like, okay, cool. Well, then the next thing I can do is add a prompt. So in here, I'm saying, can you please add the convert time zone action with a base time of 12 a.m. for yesterday's date. And I want the source time zone to be in Auckland and the destination time zone as UTC with this particular format. So that's based on the response that I received before this prompt. So now I'm going to hit send. And we should see Copilot working behind the scenes in understanding my request. And it's gone ahead and added the time zone. So now if I select the convert time zone, we'll see that it has listened to what I asked it to do, which is pretty cool, right? The only small change that I need to make here is I do need to select the actual value because it just entered it in as text, but I'll just select the actual value of the Auckland Wellington time zone. And we're good to go. So I'll just rename this. I'll just put this as 12 a.m. Because as I mentioned, we also need to do another one for at the end of the day, so 11:59 p.m. And one of the cool things that we can do in Power Automate Cloud Flows today is copy and paste an action.
Okay.
So I'm going to right click with my mouse. I'm going to copy this action, and then I can select this plus icon. And when I select it, it gives me the option to paste an action. So with a few clicks, I've been able to save time already.
I love that. This is great. This is really cool.
So I'm going to update this to at the end of the day. So that's that done. And I'll also rename this so that we don't get confused. Okay.
I like that you used a Copilot to build this, and then you're also using a Copilot to modify it to do exactly what you want, and the various parts of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
cool. Yeah. And I'm also still in control as well. So now I can go back to this action and I can modify the filter row value based on those actions that I've already added. So I'm just going to clear all of this. So now what I'm going to specify is only filter to the tasks where the end date is greater than midnight, as well as less than 11:59. So that will give me all of the tasks that were due yesterday, and they also have a status of active because we don't want to bring through the completed tasks, right?
Right. Okay, this is cool.
Yeah, so now what I can do is I can insert what we call dynamic content. So it's going to pull through the value from that convert time zone action. So the first one that I want to select is the one that is for 12 a.m.
Yep.
So then I select add, and then I just need to enter in another query in here. So this time I'm going to grab the converted time of 11:59 to specify the end of the day. So here we go. And then that last criteria is to make sure that I only pull through activities for my tasks where it hasn't been completed. In other words, it's open. Okay.
Yeah, that's right. You don't want all the closed tasks listed. Then it's like thanks for nothing. Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm going to continue downstream in the flow, check that everything else is right, because that's one of the things that you need to do whenever you work with Copilot is to verify whatever it has suggested to you is in fact what you want it to do.
Right.
That's the best practice that we have to apply. Okay, so here it has a condition, and I'm going to check the expression in here. So this looks good. So basically this expression, can I scroll up? Oh, okay, I'll just hover over it so you can see it. This expression is pretty much saying check that the length of the previous action, so the list rows action, is greater than 0. So in other words, this will tell me that I do have tasks that are past the due date. So this one is fine. Copilot did this one correctly. And then now we want to go down to the true branch. So in here, it's already telling me that I've got invalid parameters. It probably means that I'm missing something. So let me go ahead and select my last action. So it's saying, okay, specify how you want to post this message in Teams. So I'm going to select chat with Flowbot. And then in here, I can add myself as a recipient. And it looks like it didn't pull through the message, but that's fine. We can manually type it in.
Go. This is a great scenario for like team admins or like a team manager who has to keep track of, like our team, we have 150 people to keep track of, like, did you do your security training? Did you file the expense report for AI tour? And annoying, right? If you can get like an automation that triggers for you and the person, the perpetrator, as well as yourself, that would be really useful. So you don't have to nag them. Automation will nag them.
Oh, it looks like it pulled it down here.
Okay.
That's okay. I can remove this. It would have been when this value was empty, but that's all right. So it did actually pull through the message like I asked in the prompt. But because I changed the option up here by saying chat with the Flowbot, I'm just going to clear these.
Yep.
Okay, so that all looks good. And before I hit save, I'll also select the flow checker. So this will tell me if there's any issues with my flow, if I have any warnings, but it all looks fine. We don't see any messages in here.
Love it.
So I'm going to exit out of this.
I love that flow debugger thingy, by the way. I love that thing.
Yeah, it's so helpful. Like it saved me a few times, especially after you run your flow and it tells you the issue and you're like, oh, this is what I need to do to fix it. Okay. So as a recap, before I hit test, we used a prompt in plain natural language to go and build me this flow. I then went and updated some of the input values and I asked Flow to add, a couple more actions. And then we also verified all of the actions in the flow are correct and edited it where necessary. So now I'm going to hit test and I'm going to select manual. So we're just going to manually trigger this flow and I'll select test and then we'll go ahead and run the flow. So now we can see in real time that it has run the flow. Okay, so it is telling me that there's an issue here. That's okay. So values of type integer and string do not match. So let's see. So it's telling me how I can fix this. So it's receiving, it's expecting to receive the value in a particular type. So if I now click edit, once again, this is the power of AI helping you out.
I love this.
Let's just track like the outputs equals it's greater than 0. Let me just change this to is not equal.
Yeah.
And we'll try this one more time. Okay, so that's saved. Okay, looks like that all checked out. I just needed to change the condition parameter, or sorry, the check on the condition.
Yeah.
So now if I head over to my teams, and as you saw in real time, it went through all of those actions, and in a matter of seconds, it completed that Cloudflow.
Yeah.
And if I head to teams, we could see that I do have one message with the Flow chatbot. So now if I select it, we could see that message is in here. So this message looks okay, right? But what would be useful is if the user could actually have a link to those tasks that are overdue in Dataverse.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go back and edit my Cloudflow and once again use Copilot to help me. So now I'll select edit and I'll go ahead and enter a prompt. So here, what I want to do is I want to add a variable. And the reason why I'm adding a variable is that is going to be my, I'm going to call it my container that will contain the links to the tasks that will contain the links to my tasks in Dataverse so that I can click on it. So now I'm asking Flow to add me a variable action where it's the type of string. So now I'll hit submit. And we'll see in a few seconds that it'll add the action. Okay, so it you'll see that the Cloudflow has been updated and some actions were moved around. So if I scroll up, it'll say that it removed this action and it updated these actions in trigger. Not quite what I wanted. However, let's go and check out the action itself.
Okay.
So in here, it did ask what I wanted it to do, which was name it as well as have it as type string. But it removed one action that I do need. So what I can do is select the undo button. But before I select the undo button, I'm going to use that same trick that I showed you earlier, where I'm going to copy this action. Then I'm going to select undo. So that will bring back the previous state of the flow.
But you still have this one. Oh, and clipboard, I like that. That's tricky.
Yeah. So then I could paste that action that Copilot actually created for me, but didn't get it quite right, but that's okay. So now it's done that. And then now what I want to do is come down to the true branch of the condition. And because I want to create a link for each of those tasks, I need to add an action, and it's what we call the apply to each action. So for every task, I need to grab some information out of it. So now if I select this icon, so I'm going to select the body value from the list rows action. So in other words, for every row, I want it to grab information from that task so that we can build that URL. So now if I ask Copilot another prompt, so I'm going to ask it to add another action in the apply to each that's going to grab the information that I want, and then it's going to update that variable that I created earlier that's acting as my container of the hyperlinks. So now I'm going to select submit, and let's see if this time Copilot will add the action in the way that I want it to. Otherwise, we'll use the same trick that I showed you earlier. Okay, so let me scroll up. Oh, okay, well, keeps wanting to remove this action. But let's go and check out whether it did it correctly. So it kind of did. So again, once again, I'll use that same trick. I'll just copy it. I'll select undo. And then this is going to revert my flow back to the previous state. And then I'll select the plus icon and select that paste action. And then you also see that automatically it knows that it's referencing that variable that I created earlier because the string is of type. And what I'm going to do is also update this value so that I can have the subject as well as the hyperlink. So I'm just going to update this with a new expression. So here's my expression where I'm building the hyperlink to that particular task. And the one last action that I'm going to update is this one where I'm going to reference that variable that contains all of the hyperlinks to those tasks that are overdue. So now I select add, I'll select save, and then we'll go and test this flow one more time. Yeah, so as you saw, even though there can be times when Copilot will listen to your prompt and let's say add the action and maybe remove some of the actions, you could still get around it by reviewing the action that it added that you requested for, as well as copy it and then revert the flow back to the previous state, but then paste that action that the AI suggested for you into your flow.
I love that.
So you're still working together.
Okay. You are. So, and you also are breaking this down into very sort of digestible, chunkable things where you're like, okay, what are you overall trying to do? And then really finesse each step and make it each one as robust as possible. That way, if like some part fails, like, hey, you hit leap year, some random bug, you're able to debug it really quickly rather than, the flow doesn't work, which is always very frustrating. I like this flow because it's extremely shareable. This is one where you just like replace your Dataverse table with whatever data source you have. And you know, it will really work for it. But this is great. I love
Yeah.
this. It's so clever too. It's so simple. The flow is not simple. The use case is simple, but there's a lot of like interesting intricacies that you found while just going through the process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So
I love it.
I will check my teams. And
Yeah.
as you can see, we've got the 3 tasks.
Yeah.
So if I go back to the model-driven app that I showed you at the beginning of this episode,
Yeah.
we'll see that we've got those 3 tasks
Yeah.
that have the due date of yesterday.
Yep.
And now it also created those hyperlinks.
Mm-hmm.
So for some reason, I can't click the hyperlinks from Teams, but that's okay. I'm just going to paste it in a new browser tab. And voila, it'll take you directly to the task in the model-driven app. So you could go and work on your task that is past the due date.
Past the due date.
And that, my friends, is Copilot and Power Automate.
I love it.
With a bunch of human elements.
A bunch of human elements. You still have to know how to use Power Automate. You have to. I like this because it's your standard developer tool, right? Well, whatever, low-code dev tool, some sort of a dev tool where you need to be competent in the tool, but you have a helper to help you get started, help you do various pieces. But you still, can't be a person off the street being like, what is Power Automate? You have to know it. And it will also help you get started because I, as a person who gets paralyzed by Power Automate, like I don't even know which beginning or end to start with. Do I start with Outlook? Do I start with Teams? Like which way do I go? It's really good in this way to say, all right, here's a framework, fill in the pieces. So I found this very useful. It's a great scenario.
Yeah. And one last tip, if I may.
Yes.
Remember how I said earlier, if you are, someone else in the team that you share this flow with, and you're looking at this and you're like, oh, I don't exactly know what this flow does, you can actually ask Copilot and Power Automate what this flow is about. So if I ask it that question, what does this flow do?
I like that.
It's going to provide me a summary of what this flow does. So there you go.
I love it. Explain me.
My final tip.
Explain me this code. Explain it to me, please. I love it. In human language. Explain it. It's great.
Yes.
I love it. Eliza, this is such a good scenario. Thank you so much for joining us and schooling us with all of the wisdom that you have gained from your years and years and years of being like the queen of automation.
Thanks,
awesome.
Donna. Thank you.
Okay, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you, Eliza, for joining us. And stay tuned for next time on Copilot Learning Hub Live.